Winamp. It rocks the llama's ass.
Wow, that's a blast from the past.
I know, bringing it back here on the Jaunty Mantis, a podcast about tabletop role-playing games and the people who love them. We try to answer creative questions for curious gamers, and my co-host Maddie had a really good idea for what question we could ask.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
Jesse.
Hi, Jesse. I'm Maddie. Here's my question for the Jaunty Mantis podcast.
Oh, do ask. Let's discuss.
How do I run a one-shot? I mean, I know, but like, I figured it'd be a great question to ask, a great topic for us to discuss, because one-shots are so different from regular adventures or campaigns. And I thought it might be useful to give some tips about how to create a one-shot, how to efficiently run a one-shot, some things to observe or things to stay away from. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great topic to talk about. And can I talk about our personal lives?
Oh, sure.
Because this is relevant, because the Jaunty Mantis boys and our Sunday night game group are on the cusp of an in-person meetup.
Okay.
Where we shall all gather from the remote corners of this great nation. Okay, this nation. And we shall be together in the same place for 4 days. And the only commitment is to play role-playing games and drink. Well, for me, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of one-shots.
I see. I was really, I was like, oh, how are we tying this in? Exactly. So people are going to run one-shots. Okay.
Yeah.
I figured I would just run multiple days worth of never-ending Dungeons and Dragons 5e so we could get you from level 1 to 20 in a weekend.
Yeah, I thought that'd be great if everybody can make it, but if we're
Yes.
down somebody.
Yeah, that's true. It would really suck to come back from this trip and be like, oh, by the way, the game's over. Everybody
we
won.
gained 12 levels while you were gone. So
they got to level 20. They're all gods now. They're reshaping the world in their image. Your guy is still back in the town, level 3. Thanks for participating.
Yeah, fun times for you.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes one-shots high level? What makes one-shots different from a regular session play?
One-shots are extremely different from regular session play because it is all about a single theme or a concept instead of a larger, broader story. So when I think of like doing a one-shot, I'm like, okay, well, what kind of game do I want to run? And what is the theme or the idea or the gimmick involved? And this all really goes back to when I was a kid and before I had really gotten into like a steady gaming group. Oftentimes, you would play games with like a friend of yours, and maybe his brother would run the game for you. And it came across this game called Top Secret SI. And I was blown away by anything in addition to Dungeons and Dragons, because in my young mind, D&D was it. I didn't know there was a West End Star Wars game. I didn't know there was a Palladium TMNT Mutants game. I didn't know there was a Top Secret SI game or a BattleTech game.
Or Amber, the diceless role-playing game.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know about Amber Diceless. So I had a friend, and his older brother would occasionally run one-shots for us. And they were really simple and straightforward. And it was usually like his character is super powerful and a badass, but is in prison, and we got to go break him out. Really simple, really straightforward, go. And that was kind of the origin of like how I started learning how to do one-shots.
Well, I know what I'm doing for that whole weekend now. Having
What,
you
Amber
guys
Diceless?
bust my badass character out of jail.
See, that was the thing, is like his character was always like super badass, and we just had to get him out of jail or rescue him or whatever. And then he could like, save the day. But we never got to the actual rescue part, because there's a problem with one-shots, which is they can sometimes take too much time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, also too, and that's one of those simulationist gameplay because that is very often the experience of people in the real world who have to get a friend or a cousin out of jail is that they're just so badass.
Yeah. Yeah. Their hands have been, classified as, lethal
Yeah, they had to
weapons.
register them with the government.
Yes.
Yes.
And after failing a psych evaluation that was obviously not up to snuff, they were put in a maximum security prison.
And
And
just think about how desperately sad their supermodel Canadian girlfriend's gonna be.
see, you are familiar with one shots.
Yeah, there we go.
But there's more to it than that. More to it than Matt's, adolescent RPG experiences.
Yeah.
What are
I mean,
your
I'm immediately
experiences?
thinking of pacing
Okay.
as a big issue. So there's like you got to make some cuts that you would make in a normal
Like
like
what?
story session. I mean, for the first one is like come with pre-made characters.
Of course. Yes.
Do not go through character creation for a one shot, even if you're playing like Dungeon World or
Mm-hmm.
Blades in the Dark. Have some well, okay, Blades in the Dark. It's like fill in three things.
Yeah, but the idea is to just really get going. So I would suggest if you're going to have character creation for a one shot, set a timer on your phone and you say, hey, everybody, you've got 10 minutes to make a character. When this goes off, we start play. If your character isn't done, I've got one right here for you.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Okay.
do you have a lot of experience creating one shots?
I don't have a lot of experience creating them. I do have a lot of experience like running them and trying to hack adventure modules or finding things that could be one shots.
Yeah.
So I
Which,
have some recommendations there, but I think for now, if it's okay, we'll just stick with the creation aspect because
yeah.
this is your cup of tea more than
Yeah.
mine.
So the whole point you want to do is, so in my experience with one shots, it's like I want to do X. Like I have a what did you call it? Fantasy heartbreaker. And I
Yes.
want, like, I have a one shot in mind to see if this, I've modified 3.x D&D. I want to see if it works. I'm going to run a one shot, right? Or, you've got the Transformers role playing game and it's the holiday season and you're like, hey, I want to run a Transformers game. The Decepticons steal Christmas. You're all Autobots. Here are your characters. You're going to the North Pole. You just got to keep it simple. Like,
So what would you do? Like, I mean, one of the things that I've heard a lot with one shots, and you tell me if you agree, is like you start in media res,
mhm.
like it kicks off in a fight or it kicks off. The Transformers are in a blizzard
Yeah.
and they have to navigate their way through this blizzard to get to the North Pole. That's the first thing because you're just running encounter, Titan counter, Titan counter.
Yes. I used to run Eberron one shots for a group. This is when you were in China, and I couldn't really get the guys to commit to a regular game, but every so often we would play, and I would play Eberron. They would just pick up their characters again, and I would immediately start with a cold open. So I would be like, you're, in this tomb. I would do like the Indiana Jones thing. You've, set all these things in place. You think you've got the order correctly. You've picked up the vase. You hear a click sound. What do you do? And then they got to get out of the Temple of Doom, so to speak, and get to the rest of the adventure. So, like, starting in the middle of the action, I think, is a great way to do a one shot. You don't want to spend a lot of time giving them whatever mission or having them, interact with a lot of NPCs. You just want to get right to whatever the point of the one shot is.
So I know like if you say like a typical play session, let's say you got 3 hours of play,
Mm-hmm.
right? Have you found like there's a sweet spot for the number of encounters to plan for a one shot?
Yeah. I would say 3 encounters with
And
an
and by encounter, I don't mean just like three fights. I mean like
right,
Transformers, the Blizzard,
right.
like Decepticon Raiders, and convincing Jetfire to join them to help
Yeah.
save Santa Claus.
Yeah, I would do 3 encounters and then have, if you really want to, have like a miscellaneous encounter that you could throw in in case you need it for some reason, like a puzzle or like a monster or whatever the case may be. Like if you just really need to throw it in there, just like maybe have a backup. The key with doing a one shot is like, don't worry if you finish early. Like that's okay in a one shot. You're just supposed to have a good time. The thing you're trying to avoid is going over.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, like, one of those other things in RPGs that reminds me of my previous life as a teacher of like
Mhm.
lesson planning. When I used to do like teacher education and teach teachers how to teach, I'd be like, I have been doing this for a decade. And still frequently, something that I expect to take 5 minutes of class time will
Yeah,
take either 2 or 15. Like
right.
something I've done before. Like,
Yeah.
so trying, it's good to have more than you need, but also be prepared to run tight. Cause,
Yes.
yeah,
Oftentimes the if your players are enjoying themselves, the sheer amount of like jokes and interactions and mischief will start eating up a lot of time. You know, when I would create one shots in a fantasy context, I would start with some like you said, Eden media res, or I would start with like a cold open, or maybe put them in the end of a combat encounter. And then I would say, okay, that was like you had been recruited by this town. The mayor says that they have prospecting rights of this mine that's a couple days travel from the town. Orcs have reportedly taken it over, and you are standing at the base of the mine looking at this gaping cave, and there are bodies piled everywhere around the mouth of the cave. What do you do? You know? So it's like just put them right in the action and give them something to travel through with a combat encounter, then give them like an obstacle, like maybe there's some sort of demon sealed in the cave and the orcs are trying to let it loose in order to like get revenge on the town, and something's gone horribly wrong and there's a bit of a puzzle and the party has to kind of figure out what happened. And then the final encounter is in the last part of that mine. One of the orcs has gotten impatient and has decided to let the demon occupy their body instead of finishing the ritual the correct way. And then you put the party on like a timer and you say, you know, in X number of rounds, this is going to go horribly wrong. Like give them the stakes. You could use the timer, the treat, you know, and the threat model from Index Card RPG. But then, you know, just keep it simple. Like 3 main encounters. Don't make every single one of them a fight, and give them something to do, explore, interact with, make a decision on along the way.
yeah,
Does that work?
I think that works pretty well as a general guideline. Um, I know if we were a different podcast, we'd talk then about like con games as one shots, but we don't run those. Although I was reading the Palladium newsletter,
Okay.
and I'm planning on going to Gen Con this year. And there was a shout, like a request, like, we need people to GM games of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Oh,
at Gen Con, and we can get you a free Game Master Pass if you'll GM for us. Just write to us like by the end of January. And I'm like, why shouldn't I keep it?
how many
After
games
all,
would
it
you
came to me.
how many games would you have to run?
I don't know, probably 2 or 3.
So you could like you could sign up for this
Yeah.
and then get the people you're going to Gen Con with to do one of your games to all sign up for
Yeah.
your first
Hey guys,
game.
sign up for my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one shot. What's gonna happen? Mutant Velociraptor hobo is gonna whip you with a bicycle chain
That's
because I made
awesome.
that character once. Yeah.
Is this your super powerful badass character that
No,
these
he was like a homeless guy that was a mutant velociraptor who had like the ninja, like the chain weapon proficiency, and I figured he just had found a bicycle chain and like knew how to whip people with it.
love it.
It was a really dumb idea. I had read there was some RPG Net post about like the guy had made an epic playlist of like the top Billboard hits of 1984, and like the party was in a Winnebago, like driving across America, and that was like the framework of the adventure, is that music's playing in the background while they're in the Winnebago getting in trouble. And
That's
so I was like,
awesome.
I'm gonna hack that. It's 1986. They're on a pontoon boat crossing Lake Okeechobee in Florida. And
This is
it's
going
like, what
places.
happens from there? They're on a boat.
Yeah, you tell me.
A sinkhole opens up and ninjas from prehistory jump out,
I
and
love
you
it.
have to defeat the ninjas, the
That's awesome.
cavemen ninjas that jumped out of the sinkhole in Lake Okeechobee.
I need to go to Gen Con and play in this game.
That's a terrible ideas that you say them out loud and you're like, this isn't a terrible idea. This is a great idea.
This is a fantastic idea.
Speaking of fantastic ideas, if you are pinched for time to run one shots, there are increasingly more and more resources available of prepackaged and pre-made things for one shots.
Hmm.
So one of the things I've been pouring through as I've been trying to plan what I'm going to run, or things I will run, plural, for this guys weekend. Starter boxes. So many RPGs have starter boxes these days with varying levels of complexity, but a lot of them, they typically include maps and some pre-made characters and an adventure, and you're good to go. D&D has done some good starter boxes. Lost Mines of Phandelver,
Hmm.
Dragon of Icespire Peaks, and then I think they have a new starter box for the 2024 edition coming out soon. Those great. That's usually actually like 5 one shots, like 5 little adventures, 1 to 5.
Yeah.
I recently just ran a free resource from D&D Beyond, was the Spelljammer Academy, which is 4 little one-shot adventures
All
that
right.
teach somebody what spell jamming is, and I've been running it for my kids and my wife as our kind of little family game. Our first session was like Sunday, and it was such a blast.
That's awesome.
Um, Free League, like Free League games have fantastic starter boxes. The Alien starter box
Hmm.
is like, okay, Free League gives you everything you need to play with the starter box. They give you pre-made characters, a rule booklet, an adventure, dice, and cards.
Okay.
Like the One Ring RPG starter box has like 5 adventures, like 8 pre-made characters. Some of them are unlockable as you go, because when you
Oh,
start,
nice.
you're in the Shire, and you're all Bilbo's relations,
Uh-huh.
including one of them is like Ludmilla, who's going to become the Sackville Bagginses
Oh, wow.
lady. Like she's there with her umbrella, pissed off about everything.
Uh-huh.
Like
Okay.
Mary's dad is there and Pippin's mom is there, and they all go on quests for Mad Baggins. And as you play, it unlocks Bilbo as a playable character, or uh, Balin, who's visiting, becomes a playable character. Uh, and it just goes from there. But there's like each one is like a one shot. So we ran
Huh.
that. It had the dice, it had the map, it had pre-made characters, it looked cool. It had the little rules book that explained it. And the first quest is Bilbo had lent a map to the Matham house in Michael Delving, and he wanted it back for some research he was doing, and they wouldn't give it back because like you gave it to us. So he sends you, his nieces and nephews, on a walking trip through the back country of the Shire to avoid notice, to break into the Matham house in Michael Delving and steal it from its vicious guardian, who which is a small like like Yorkie. It's a small Yorkshire Terrier, who just barks. That's like,
That's
and that's it.
awesome.
Yeah. And then the next one, you're looking for a lost child who's encountered a troll on the moors. Like it's
Oh, wow.
like
Yeah.
it ramps, but like each one is self-contained, can be played in about 2.5, 3 hours, teaches you the game. I already mentioned the Alien one's great. The Walking Dead one is fantastic.
Hmm.
I haven't played the Blade Runner one yet, but I own it. Like there are so many resources with these starter boxes that more and more companies are doing as box sets with their games that like you're really spoiled for choice. Pick a genre you want to run. If you want to do weird Swedish fantasy, Dragonbane is like that's the one with the duck race. Like
Yeah,
that's out there.
that's awesome.
Also, Onyx Path, who does like vampire and that kind of stuff, they have jump starts that are usually about $4 in PDF.
Okay.
It's not a physical product, but $4 on Drive Through RPG. You get a thing that has a brief version of the rules, pre-made characters, and a scenario to play. And the one I was reading yesterday was the jump start for the Exalted Essence edition because I was like, maybe we can do a one shot of Exalted while we're there. And it has specific advice for if you're running this as a one shot, do
Nice.
this, do this, do this. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Make sure someone is this PC. They have in their background specific information that'll speed it up.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
cool.
I love that. You have probably run way more one shots than I have. Can you tell me like what makes a one shot a success? Like what are the things you need to keep in mind to make a one shot success? Because in my opinion, it isn't necessarily finishing the one shot. I mean, people can
Mm-hmm.
still have a good time, right? But like, I guess like, what are the things that like people should keep in mind, and maybe some things that they should avoid when running a one shot? As someone who has run so many of them from different game systems and different books and IPs and all of that, what do you think?
I think one of the signs you're having success is if halfway through people stop asking you how the rules work.
Yeah, okay, that's a
Because
good
that
one.
means they either have picked it up or they're just having so much fun they don't care. They trust that it's going to be. People say, "Can we do that again?" At the
Mm-hmm.
end, I think is a
Mm-hmm.
good marker. You did it. And I think one of the things too is you should probably brace yourself for a lot of times your one shot's going to be a two shot.
Yeah, that's true. I could see that.
Like this happened with the Call of Cthulhu game I'm playing in. Like we were just so on it with the timing and everything with our first investigation. We literally did it in one shot and we had so much fun. We're like, let's do it again.
Yeah.
And then we went on to our next investigation, which is taking more time, but we're having fun. Like it's not a
Right.
knock against it, but like this one's not working out as a one shot. Timing is a nebulous thing that's kind of hard to control. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think if people want to do it again, or if you're like, oh, looks like we're out of time, would you guys be up for finishing up some other time? People are like, yeah, then it
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah, and that can be a great way to kind of like get we mentioned this kind of like as far as an idea for getting people to try a new game or testing out a new group. If you've ever had people who are kind of game curious, like I've had people in my 40 years here on planet Earth, my 40-ish years on planet Earth, playing a lot of role-playing games. When people find out you play D&D, there are people who are like, "Oh, is that fun? I've always wondered about playing D&D." And you're like, "Well, why don't you try it out?" So like what is a great like what should we keep in mind if that happens? Like if we have a group of people who are, let's say, brand new to role playing games and they've heard it, they've watched Stranger Things, they want to try out Dungeons and Dragons, what's a good like kind of like what are some good like things to keep in mind? I'm trying to avoid saying best practices because that's fucking corporate talk, but you know what I mean.
Is best practice corporate talk? I just
Yeah.
thought it was the best practice.
Sure. Sure.
Um, I think if you're doing a one shot for newbies, again, pre-make characters and lean into those tropes. Like
Okay.
have your dwarf basically be Gimli.
Mm-hmm.
Like have the fighter be like Mad Mardigan. I mean, like, and say this guy is like Mad Mart. Like use those film references. Like you don't need to write a backstory. You can do like a sentence or two of motivation. Um, I would also say don't be afraid to use an OSR version of D&D as the teaching game. If they're
Okay.
new, they won't know the difference. If you use like basic expert or old school essentials or mazes or God help them, Morkborg. And
So why do you recommend that? Why do you recommend like because I agree with you. People start being interested in Dungeons and Dragons, but there's more simplified rules out there that play easier to people's like first steps into role playing games. But like to play devil's advocate a little bit here, like this is the most accessible and easiest to pick up version of Dungeons and Dragons that I've ever encountered in 5e.
mhm.
So why are you recommending doing like an OSR, uh, for a one shot?
Because I've made characters in old school essentials with my 6 and my 8-year-old, and I've made characters using D&D 5th edition 2024 with my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old, and I'll tell you which one was faster and easier to get through
Why was that?
because there's less.
There's less to do. There's less to keep track of.
There's less
There's
to
less
keep
to
track of.
explain.
Like one of the things, and I think this is really cool. I got such a thrill out of reading it and seeing how it works, right? There's this weapon mastery thing in 2024 where all the weapons have this weapon mastery tag. And if you're able to activate that, it gives you a cool ability. Like I think the scimitar has Vex, right? Or the
Okay.
short sword has Vex. And what that means is when you do like an offhand attack for 2-weapon fighting, if you have weapon mastery in that and it has Vex, it's just that offhand attack is part of your attack action. You don't have to use a bonus action to do it, leaving your bonus action open to do something else you can do with the bonus action. That doesn't play well with my 8-year-old or a new player. It plays
Yeah.
well with me. I like live and breathe the mechanics of this game, like because I've played it so much, and I'm like, here's a cool new way I can interact with these rules. But a
Right.
new player does not give a shit about that and will be overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. And OSR sets you up for if they're like, well, I want to wield 2 swords. You're like, great, you have 2 swords.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, can I make attacks with both of them? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, don't get
Like,
attached.
yeah.
Like I think it also like it I hate to say this. We had that one comment on a YouTube video just like consequences of death, ask Ned Stark. And I was like, I thought that was an interesting comment. I don't know if that guy was mad at us or agreeing with us, but it's YouTube, who knows? But I'm like, I personally think like it's probably not a terrible thing to lose your character in an
Mhm.
early run of D&D so you pick up some best practices of like I'm not just here doing fan fiction. This is a game with rules and consequences. And maybe there won't be later, but having that idea I think makes it more exciting.
Yeah. If death is on the table, it's more
And
exciting in
Death's
my
been drinking.
opinion.
Get off the table, you crazy skeleton.
Like I have run one shots where the players have done the most basic, simple shit and had the greatest night of gaming of their lives.
Yeah,
You know?
the game where they're all like naked prisoners and they push the guard off the balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've mentioned that before. Yeah. On the podcast. It's like those weren't characters that they took hours making and like planned out, their feats and their class features and their spells and all this stuff. They were just like basic naked humans trying to escape, you know, and they did a really basic thing and it almost didn't work. And they were like on their feet and high fiving each other. And I was like, this is amazing. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what just happened?
No, I still, to this day, I was thinking about this because, like, one of the things that's going to happen next in the Spelljammer Academy is it's their orientation day at the Spelljammer Academy, and they have to do like a fitness test, which is
Mhm.
a series of die checks to like go through this obstacle course. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that could be really boring. Just be like, okay, now I need a dexterity check. But I remember the guy who ran the Exalted game for us when we started that Lunar Exalted game, he had this
Right.
whole thing about my character just climbing a tree with a haunch of meat to leave as an offering at the top for this spirit I had an alliance with. And like he made climbing this tree the most epic, crazy, enjoyable like narrating experience. And I'm
Tell
like,
us about it. What was so amazing about it?
just the way that like he would like I'd roll the dice and get like 8 successes on a dexterity athletics roll or climb or whatever it was, and he'd be like, your claws sink into the bark and you can smell the sap as you pull yourself up faster and faster. The ground disappears in the darkness below. Like he's just like that
So it was in the
narrating.
narration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm very jealous of this. This is one of my shortcomings in game is that I wish I could do more evocative narration and description, and I've heard a similar, high level of doing that. And I'm extremely jealous of it, like
It just takes practice.
yeah,
Like
it's something I have not been able to practice enough to get down. And, I try, but should someone running a one shot, should they focus on spending that kind of time in a narration? Is that really important to do? Is it more important to keep pace and momentum going?
I think that it's more important to do that in a one shot
Okay, why?
because you're not going to have connection between the PCs or the player's attachment to their character to drive the story forward in that
Interesting.
narrative sense. The story is just the story that happens in that session at that table. And so you need that color.
Right.
I
Okay,
think that's
so
going to, like,
yeah,
whether you're
keep going.
playing with the veterans or newbies.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to see your point. Like that, there aren't many opportunities to get truly invested in the world because it's a one shot and it's taking place over a couple of hours and everybody knows it's going to end and you got pre-made characters. So it's like people are working on a thin concept at best,
Mm-hmm.
something they've always wanted to try out, or they have no idea what's going on, or they're just going to instantly model it after, Brienne of Tarth. And
And
I,
in a
you know,
one shot, great. Okay, a normal game, great. There you go. You got a solid
yeah.
concept for a character. I mean, lazy Sly Flourish is just like for your NPCs, pick a character from a movie and write down there. And it's like, why are all mine Steve Buscemi? I don't. Anyway,
So I like it. I dig it. Yeah, like give them a way to get invested in the world by really doubling down on the narration. Do you have
and
any
give a couple
tips for
cool
that?
examples of that with some easy die rolls early on while you're picking up mechanics if it's a new system or they're
Okay.
new players, and then start asking them, what does that look like? What does that sound like? And like, because you've laid out that example, and then they can jump in too. And then you're getting some best practices, I think, for role playing. Best practice.
Do you have any other tips for somebody like me who struggles with narration? I mean, usually when I run a one shot, I'm not doing a lot of prep,
Yeah.
in order to make that happen. Are there key things that we should narrate, or if you see an opportunity to narrate something heavily, just go for it?
Uh, what you can, yeah, if you see an opportunity, narrate something. If you have an encounter, you have a good idea of how it's going to go, like maybe pre-script like 2 lines of a narration for like your NPC. One of the things that as I've been thinking about this, because I was kind of going into running the Spelljammer Academy as a one shot, but I expect to pick up part two, part three, and so on, and then eventually do the Light of Zarixis because I'm gonna get my value out of my Spelljammer box set.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
callback.
Yep. Deep cuts, episode 2. Uh, yeah, there's cool stuff in there that I think you should do for your one shots. So
Hmm.
one of the things that I want to give a shout out to this adventure for is the first encounter is a combat, is in the middle of a combat that is a simulation that the PCs don't realize it's a simulation. Like they're disoriented. If they ask questions, you could say, you think they must have cast some spell, but you're going to fight. Your ship has been boarded by these astral reavers. And then there's a little table to roll on for what the astral reavers are weird. What's weird about them? So,
Okay.
like, one of the astral reavers was a normal person, but had a fishbowl with a brain in it for its head.
Okay.
Another one was wearing a blood-stained wedding dress. I tried to tone that one down for my kids. the
Okay.
ramifications being disturbing.
I mean, you're
Um,
the one that has to put them to bed
yeah,
and put them back to bed when they've had nightmares. So yes.
one of them had like reflective skin. Like he
Okay.
was a normal guy, except his skin was like a mirror. And then the third one had like helicopter blades on his head and could hover in place or fly at a speed of 10.
Aside from the bride covered in blood, this sounds perfect for children.
I know. Yeah, it was pretty great. And then there's another table of like random things they just see as they're traversing the Spelljammer Academy on their orientation day. And so I just took the funniest, most kid appropriate ones from there. And then when they were traveling to a new location, be like, as you're wandering through the hallway, you see two officers in the Spelljammer fleet uniform of gold, and they're escorting a visiting gift dignitary. As they're showing him some of the amenities of the tower, the giff breaks wind loudly, and you see the tails of his coat ruffle. Both of the officers slightly color, but seem to ignore it very diplomatically. And the kid's
Hmm.
just like, the hippopotamus guy farted.
I love it.
But that was written in there. And I think if you have a one shot, just write some color sites to get in there that you can throw in real quick evocatively, but they're just things happening in the background.
Yeah.
Later, they pass two officers wheeling a mind flayer strapped down to a gurney with like a metal brace on his tentacles. And it looked at them. And I was like, you can hear a scratching in the back of your head, like, free me. And then the cart jostles and it's gone as he looks away. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. And then later that night, one of your kids comes into your bedroom. Dad, there's a mind flayer underneath my bed.
Well, you can move still, so that's good. Carrie asked me in the game, "It's like, are mind flayers always evil?" And I'm like, well, they eat the brains of sentient creatures, so usually, but sometimes they're romanceable now, thanks to Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Mind flayers have no souls.
Okay.
All right. I don't want to spoil this for you, Jesse, but the game's been out for over a year. The Emperor is fucking evil and he is messing with you the entire time.
Oh yeah, no, I knew that.
Yeah. Like
But you can bang him.
yes, you can bang him. Yes,
Okay.
that's true. I have not. I'm waiting for that special playthrough.
The spicy one.
Yeah, after all the mods have come out.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, rely on those random tables, get a couple, like write a couple bullet points in the margins of like your notes of just like color scenes, things to prompt that narration, and then just lean in hard on that color because that is going to be a lot of the story. You're
Yeah,
not going to have time for an elaborate arc or like, even Monster of the Week. It's a one shot.
right.
So that's my advice.
That's great advice. What kind of things should we avoid in a one shot? Whether we're running them from a pre-written source of material or we've decided to create a one shot, because I like one shots because they're just kind of like a little microcosm of creativity that you can just create for the moment and see what happens. And if it doesn't land, that's fine. It was a one shot. If it did land and it was really good, you've got a future idea, or maybe you've got an excited group and they want to keep playing. Like, you can really test the limits of like your imagination and what you can do at the table, and without, as long as you're not making people uncomfortable, you can really try some really cool weird shit if you want for a
Mm-hmm.
one shot. So like, what are
Yeah.
some things that people should avoid when
Six
creating
or
or
more
running?
scenes.
6 or more scenes. Okay.
Um, like red herrings. Don't put a red herring in a one shot. You don't have time for it.
Yeah. I was going to say keep it simple and straightforward, which I think speaks to what you're saying.
Hmm.
Like, you want to be like mind-numbingly obvious about the clues of this mystery.
Yeah, I would. I would actually say, like, this is so funny. I was thinking, like, oh yeah, don't try and do an intrigue scenario as a one shot. But then I remember the best intrigue scenario I've ever played. Shout out to my friend Lauren, ran this as a one shot for fifth level character. She's like, just bring a fifth level character, we'll do this. And I was like, oh wow, intrigue at a noble's ball in D&D is actually fun. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
one shot. So like it's not my skill set. So maybe forget that advice. Don't do more than
Yeah.
16s. Don't do
Yeah.
red herrings. Um, you don't have to have a cliffhanger. You
Yeah.
can, but you don't have to.
I would also say if you're writing a one shot, really keep your list of NPCs like tight, like not too many. Like don't give people a lot because like the thing with NPCs, I don't know if Jesse can speak to this, but like this has happened to me a lot. I have created an NPC and then for whatever fucking reason, the group has latched onto them.
Yeah.
And I was like, this was just supposed to be the guy that got you across the river, but now
Mm-hmm.
he's got a nickname and they're all drinking together and
Or honest on it.
yeah, exactly. And they've all become best friends and now I got to fucking create a family for this guy because he needs a backstory because,
When that guy becomes a revenant because he helped us and then hunts us down, I'm going to be so sad.
when he becomes a collector.
When he becomes
Yes.
a collector and we have to put him down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Those okay, anything else?
No, I think that about covers it from my end. You good?
Yeah. Yeah, if you've ever gotten curious about running a role-playing game, you want to try your hand at the DM's chair or the game mother's chair, consider a one shot.
Yeah. And if you don't, are you worried about writing one or it's your first time out, or you just want to try a new game for new or have a group of new people, starter boxes and jump starts are your best friend.
Yeah, definitely. I am normally not in favor of pre-written adventures. And I think if there was ever going to be an asterisk or an exception to that, I think it would be pre-written one shots. Because I think the value of a pre-written one shot is exponential in comparison with like a full pre-written adventure. I think there's way more value to a pre-written one shot for any range of gamer audience.
Yep. And here's an example real quick. I just wanted to share this because I had found it earlier from the Jumpstart for Exalted Essence Edition, running this scenario. If you plan to run this scenario as a quick one session game, then have the characters learn about the issues in Nerette first. Use this character as the hook, giving them the information about the artifact and the bad guys looking for it immediately. If you want to run this over multiple sessions, give the characters a chance to learn about this artifact and the motivation over time.
Right on.
Like, there you go. Specific instructions. Give them what they need to move the action forward right now.
Yeah. And if you think that there's ever a moment where you're like, is this too obvious? Like, that's a good thing. Have it be too obvious. It is totally okay if your player characters are like, I knew it. I got it. I figured it out. And you're
They're
like,
big
well,
damn heroes.
yeah. Celebrate that mentality for them for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, did we say our email yet?
JohnTMantis@gmail.com.
Yeah, if you know a good resource for one shots,
Yeah,
or played in a really good one, or had a cool idea, tell us about it. JohnTMantis@gmail.com.
that's right. We're on the social medias. Jawanti Mantis on X.
Ugh.
Keep it alive for Jesse, people. Keep
Yeah,
it alive.
please be the first to send me a message.
Force Jesse to use Twitter.
But we doing this 3 years now. Be the first.
3 years. Jesus. Really?
Well,
Wow. It's over
what is-
70 episodes. I don't know if it's been 3 years.
I think
Maybe
it's
it
been
has
like
been.
2.5 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Be the first person in 2.5 years to send me a message at Wanty Mantis on X.
Everybody, Jesse hates using Twitter or X or whatever. So we have to make him use it. And we can only do that by
Yay.
interacting with him.
Yay.
So let's cause Jesse pain by following Jawanti Mantis on X and messaging Jesse.
I mean,
through
isn't that the
profile.
reason why we make content and put it on the internet so we can experience pain from strangers?
Yeah. Definitely. Yes. Yes. So until then, keep playing those fucking role-playing games, am I right?
Yeah, or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah. Go out and get one shot. Wait a minute. No, scratch that. That's not what I meant.
Go out and listen to Hey Man, Nice Shot by Filter.
Okay.
And then take your picture by Filter and be like, that's the same band?
Wow. I have no frame of reference on this one, Jesse.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.